because she's playing with it.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll begin with our land acknowledgement. At the Township of Severn, we recognize the following land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, in which the Township of Severn operates, is part of the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples have been inhabiting and caring for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Ojibwe or Chippewas peoples. This territory is covered by the Lake Simcoe Treaty 16 and the J. Collins land purchase. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. And I'll sing O Canada, please. Thank you. Any disclosure of approval of the agenda? We'll do the disclosure of pecuniary interest first, Madam Clerk. And then we're going to do.
You'll adopt the agenda first and then.
Okay.
Yep.
Mover to seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, second by Councillor Minnings. All in favor? That's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We do have one presentation today, just to the presenter. Is it 10 minutes or 15 minutes? 10 minutes. Welcome and come on up.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jen Russell. I am the Director of Communications and Engagement for the Georgian Bay General Hospital Foundation. Thank you so much for having me here this morning. On September 29th, the GBGH Foundation publicly launched our We See You Inside and Out capital campaign. Its intention is to build an acute mental health wing at the hospital to invest in priority medical equipment and technology across the hospital. So I'm here today just to give you an update on that campaign and on the hospital itself. But first, I just wanted to, if we go to the next slide, just say a quick thank you. The township has been supporting the Seg Bay Chamber of Golf tournament for 12 years, and that tournament has raised over very close $290,000 for GBGH over the past 12 years. So thank you for continuing to support in that way. On the next slide, I'll give you a quick update on the hospital itself. It's a very busy hospital. We have over more than 800 staff, 250 professional staff, and now over 100 volunteers. We serve a permanent population of more than 65,000 residents, but that number definitely grows in those summer months, as I'm sure you see here, to more than 200,000 visitors and cottagers as well. GBGH is funded for 113 beds, but what we see are very drastic swings in occupancy and in demand for hospital services based on seasonal trends, but also on health in the community. Our emergency department is very busy with more than 43,000 visits in a year. And our surgical department continues to grow as well with more than 5,000 surgeries. And those diagnostic numbers, CT scans, x-rays, ultrasound, and now MRI that we've added to that are growing as well. And certainly tens of thousands of tests each year. On the next slide, you'll see just a breakdown of where our emergency department visits are coming from. It's certainly a busy emergency department, but for your residents, although it's a small percentage, it doesn't account for any seasonal residents that might be visiting the area and then choosing to come to the hospital, as everybody's numbers are based on where they have their primary residence. On the next slide, I'll just show you quickly some realities and stats about who's coming to the hospital. So social determinants of health are the conditions in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age. They include factors like income, housing, education, employment, access to healthcare. These factors have a profound impact on health outcomes. They influence everything from chronic disease to emergency department visits, that sort of thing. What you'll note here is that 73% of the people within GBGH's catchment area are actually from high social determinants of health risk groups. This means that these residents face a lot of barriers to good health. The impact on our hospital because of that has to do with higher demand for hospital services, more complex patient needs. There's often multiple things that they're coming in for, need for holistic coordinated care within the community when they go home. And it's also for 40% higher emergency department visits for those in those higher risk groups. So it just means at this point that we have to prioritize, the hospital has to prioritize those resources to address both medical and social needs in a lot of cases. On the next slide, you'll see population growth. That's already up there. Thank you. Not only is our community facing significant barriers to good health, but the population of North Simcoe is also increasing quite rapidly. GBGH is represented on there by the red line. The provincial average is the blue. And then I think the only other area that's really growing at a much steeper rate or the highest rate is Ottawa. Our catchment area is projected to grow by 35% over the next 20 years, which is significantly higher than the Ontario average. On the next slide, inevitably, this means that the demand for hospital services is growing as well. Today, our hospital's been operating at about between 125 and I'd say 140%, probably steadily for the past 3 weeks. That it goes in ebbs and flows. But this means that 25% or 30% of those admitted patients are actually being cared for in non-ideal situations, in stretchers and hallways, in cubbies, not in their own personal room within the hospital. It's not unusual. It happens many times throughout the year that we see those ebbs and flows. And with the predicted growth over the next 20 years, we're certainly going to be seeing exceeding capacity on a more regular basis. On the next slide, you'll see demand for hospital capacity. It's very hard to determine what all these things are, but essentially the midnight census provides an accurate measure of occupancy within the hospital. This is essential for determining whether the hospital can accommodate new admissions. And I think what you'll notice is the red really indicates those times when we're above the 113 beds within the hospital. And you'll notice that that's becoming more and more the norm. So as much as it's still fluctuating up and down, it's becoming more and more that it's looking red on that chart. On the next slide, you'll just see a peer comparison to other hospitals that are of similar size. Relatively, we have a high number of emergency department visits and patient days relative to these peer hospitals, which speaks to the lack of walk-in clinics in our community as well. We have a higher demand for those emergency services, but it's also higher acuity of people because of those social determinants of health groups as well. On the next one, I can share with you some exciting success stories for the hospital in the last little while. So I think since I've been here, we've been able to open a new MRI suite at GBGH. It was opened in March of 2025. We're operating that 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. That is what we're funded for now. So that should be about 4,000 scans within a year, should be able to be accomplished within that time. I think we're close to 3,800 scans to date in the 10 months or 10 months essentially since we've opened. But this has provided a really important access to local care for residents around. Our MRI suite is actually offering services and getting referrals from people from out of area as well, because the wait times are significantly lower here. And so that's been a benefit for very local, but also MRI wait lists across the region. The next thing we're working on is mammography. So that is under construction as we speak. It will definitely fill an urgent need in our community as there's very low screening rates right now in North Simcoe. So there's about 7,200 eligible individuals. This will allow us to provide diagnostic services, but the program that we're operating is also going to do kind of the full range of diagnostics. So breast-guided ultrasound or ultrasound-guided biopsies, as well as breast MRIs and breast ultrasounds as well. So full range of diagnosis in the community, which will really increase that access to care for lots of residents. And then in terms of surgical services, we've increased the hours and continue to look at partnerships to bring out of area physicians to our hospital so that they can provide surgeries and reduce their wait lists while we have some OR time and a really great support team at GBGH. So on the next slide, this is what we are working towards now is our acute mental health program. There is a significant need for this in our community and the region in general. Nearly 60% of all patients who are seeking mental health care at GBGH also have a medical need. So they can't access a psychiatric facility specifically. They need access to care in an acute care hospital. The average wait time for patients who are coming to GBGH in mental health crisis is 66 hours. That means they're sitting in a very small room with nothing but an exam bed, waiting for a bed in an acute mental health facility so that they can seek access and have a psychiatrist and move their care forward. That's the average. There's people who wait 100 hours. There's people who we had someone in the past couple months wait 140 hours. So it's 5 days of sitting. And if you weren't unwell before you got there, you certainly would be after 5 days of just sitting in a small room by yourself with your own thoughts. It's very challenging, and there's just, until we have this program, there isn't anything that we can do about it. But we're certainly very determined to move forward with building this program so that we can care for those patients holistically and when they come needing help. So on the next slide, you'll see this is our campaign priorities, mental health obviously being at the top of that list. It'll be a 40,000 square foot addition that we're planning to build for mental health with 24 acute care beds. It will also have outpatient and a day program so that we're supporting people even after they've received that acute care as they transition back into the community. There's also a focus on diagnostic imaging, continue to increase what we have available. And then really important renovations to our pharmacy and lab, which are the unsung heroes of a hospital, I feel like, because they're behind the scenes, but they touch every patient that goes through that hospital. And so those spaces in our hospital are about 50 years old. They're original construction. And they've just outgrown with the number of pieces of equipment and the number of people working in those areas. They've simply outgrown their space. So renovating to be able to give them the right space and meet the safety standards and everything is going to be super important. And then obviously we continue to invest in equipment on an ongoing basis. Is that my timer? Oh, sorry. I didn't know the first one was a timer. I will flip through very quickly. I'm so, it does sound like a phone. I'm so sorry. So yes, I will just, if you go to the second last slide, I'll wrap it up really quick. We are looking at this campaign as the building block for a future hospital as well. And so that is you go 2 more slides, 1 more slide. There we go. That's our priorities over the next number of years. So my apologies for going over time.
Apologies. No, that's a great presentation. Thank you very
I'm happy
much.
to answer any questions.
Any questions, council? Council or Deputy Mayor Cox?
Yeah, through the chair. This mental health one, do you not work with Waypoint? Like or is this just, you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, for sure. So right now, mental health is done regionally.
Right.
So
Yes.
there are beds at OSMH, at RBH,
Right.
and at Waypoint
Yep.
in our community. But it's on a priority list. So if someone comes into GBGH and needs an acute mental health bed, it's done through a central registration,
Right.
and the first available bed is offered to that patient.
Okay.
That's the way that it's supposed to work. So I think it's a regional issue where there just aren't enough. There isn't enough volume of beds.
Well, you're right. Yeah. And I think that is a regional problem. I can't believe that people sit and wait 5 days. I mean, that's just wrong, in my opinion. This is something I think that the provincial government should hear from you about. Like, our MPP, I think this information is important that they see this. Like,
Yeah.
if you have a mental health problem and you're in a room for 5 days or even 66 hours, and if it's a severe one, that means a paramedic or someone has to sit, or a security person would have to sit with that person.
Yeah. So the plan that GBGH has put forward has been submitted to the provincial government.
Okay.
We need their approval in
Right.
order
Oh,
to
I know.
build it and to move forward. And so I would say our CEO is very frequently
Good.
having conversations with the ministry
Yeah.
to move this forward and to present those exactly what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
people are not receiving the care they need in the time they need it. And we have a plan to help. Can you help us support
Yeah.
that? So
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor McIntyre.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. Jen, is there enough room at that hospital to expand, grow out? I mean, in terms of the space?
So in 2020, actually, the foundation purchased 22 acres of land behind our hospital.
Okay.
And so we're holding it in trust until the hospital is ready to start building. So there's plenty of room. That'll be enough room for an expansion. So the mental health program will go off the back of the existing hospital. And it will be a bridge to the new hospital. So once that 40,000 square foot is built, then there's room on that land behind it to also build the new hospital as well.
And just to follow up, I guess my question was asked in a roundabout way by the deputy mayor about the provincial government stepping up, and you've indicated that you're going to go after grants and loans and whatever to get there.
Yeah. So with the way that hospitals are funded, the capital expansion for any hospital is 90% paid for by the province and the Ministry of Health, and 10% is the responsibility of the community. Plus the community through the foundation is also responsible for every piece of equipment that goes into any new build. So we have to put forward all of those proposals. The ministry has to approve them and agree to fund them before we can move forward.
Any further comments? Okay, thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you, guys.
Madam Clerk,
You too.
have a motion?
Thank you. The motion is that the delegation from Jen Russell, Director of Communications and Engagement for Georgian Bay General Hospital Foundation, and the update be received for information.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Any members of council like Deputy Mayor Cox?
Yeah, I would like to pull E 3.3, E 3.6, and E 4.3, please.
Any others? Okay, Madam Clerk, Do we have a motion? Just for the benefit of the audience, if one of the consent items has not been pulled, what does that mean? Because I know there.
Yeah, so if the item has been pulled, the motion that stands in the agenda is the one that's deemed to be passed. So,
Perfect.
okay. So the motion then is that the consent list for January 21st, 2026, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as resolutions of council, with the exception of items E 3.3, E 3.6, and E 4.3.
Deputy Mayor Cox?
I'm sorry, through the chair. I'm just want to ask a question on E 3.2. Muskoka Street, Washago. It says bylaw amendment, including be brought forward immediately. So does that mean it's passed or does it have to come back again?
Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The bylaw is on today's agenda at the end of the meeting for adoption.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I thought that, but I just wanted to make sure.
Comments? Okay, mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Next motion is that council resolve into committee of the whole.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Councillor Minnings. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Brennan, it's up to you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, I'm Phil Brennan and I'm chair of this portion of the meeting. Welcome and good morning. There are two public meetings regarding proposed development applications in accordance with the Planning Act. I am pleased to advise that this meeting is being broadcast live on Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meetings was sent by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject properties. Signage was also posted on the subject properties to provide information about the application. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for a statutory public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application. The purpose of the meetings is to inform and provide the public and committee of the whole with an opportunity to ask questions and express views with respect to the proposals. The format of the public meetings will be as follows. The applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the application. Second, township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant or their agent. Third, next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And finally, members of the committee will be given an opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meetings, the applicants, their agents, and if required, township staff will be given the opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today at the public meetings on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment applications. Following the meetings, the information obtained, including questions and comments submitted by members of the public and committee, will assist the township to determine next steps. The township is the approval authority for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, for which the committee may recommend the bylaws to be considered at a future council meeting or ask for additional information prior to council's further consideration. If in the future township council decides in favor of the application, members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decisions may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meetings in person or by YouTube, Zoom, or telephone may email or call the township's planning department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision on the applications. So the first of those meetings, public meeting for 3900 Minoki Beach Road, zoning bylaw amendment application. First, the applicant's presentation. I now call on the applicant's agents, James Hunter from Morgan Planning and Development, to please present the information provided within item F 1.1 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of the application.
Good morning, Council. My name is James Hunter of Morgan Planning. I'm here on behalf of the landowner and applicant Ted Hollins for an application at 3900 Minoki Beach Road. Next slide, please. So what you're seeing here is an aerial of the subject lands. The bottom left corner is a zoomed in image of the developed portion of the property. So you can see the overall land holdings include a single detached dwelling and accessory structures. Primarily the lands are farmed and vacant. Property is serviced by a well and septic. And as well, the lot statistics include 12.4 hectares and about 256 meters of frontage along Minoki Beach Road. Next slide, please. Just for a quick planning overview, so the property is designated agricultural and rural in the township official plan. And I'll highlight that the property right now is currently zoned rural or RU, because that's what we're going to be speaking to today as part of a zoning bylaw amendment application. Next slide, please. So in September of 2025, we came before Committee of Adjustment for a consent application. As part of that application, it was approved and our appeal period lapsed in October 7th of 2025. With that decision, there was a number of conditions of approval, which we are here to fulfill, highlighting that there's 3 conditions of approval, 2, 3, and 4, which apply to the zoning bylaw amendment application. So again, that's what we're here this morning to speak to. So the first one I'll highlight is condition 2. So again, at our own expense, we obtained a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the separate lands to an appropriate zone. Condition 3 was that the applicants apply and obtain at their own expense a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the retained lands to a site-specific zone. And this is to prohibit a future residential dwelling on the agricultural lands, which I will show later. And condition number 4 essentially is just demonstrating compliance with the zoning bylaw for the township of Severn, and where needed, a zoning bylaw amendment would be included. So again, we're here as I guess 2 different components of the application, which I'll show next. So again, just highlighting that we're here tonight or this morning to implement the conditions of that approval. So next slide, please. This shows the approved consent sketch that was granted by committee. So the yellow, we're going to call the retained parcel, which is our agricultural parcel of land. And the blue that we're showing there, that's our severed parcel. So I'm going to be speaking to that as our rural or rural residential property here today. Next slide, please. So I broke the zoning bylaw amendment into 2 slides. So this one in particular has to deal with the agricultural parcel, which I just showed in yellow. So as part of that condition of approval, the amendment number 1 is that we have a zoning bylaw amendment that will prohibit new residential dwellings on the remnant agricultural parcel. So a way to implement this is through zoning, which is what we're seeking for today. So the current zone is a rural RU zone, and we're going to a specific rural exception. So highlighting that exception would prohibit any new future dwellings on the agricultural property. Next slide, please. And then the second component of our rezoning application is for the residential rural lands, which was previously shown in blue. So that is the portion of our property with a residential dwelling. So again, highlighting that there's kind of 2 components of this, which would be 2 conditions. So amendments 2 and 3. The first one speaks to the residential parcel. So what we're looking to do is rezone this to rural residential from the rural zone. So again, changing to a more specific and appropriate zoning for that rural residential property. To accompany that, the amendment number 3 that's shown here speaks to the accessory uses on that portion of the property. So this is actually to satisfy the animal control bylaw, as our client does have an existing enclosed structure associated with chickens. So there's a chicken run, an enclosed structure to house those chickens, and then ultimately to ensure that the applicable provisions of that animal control bylaw do apply. So what we're just looking to do here, there's kind of 3 dots that you see on the screen or bullet points. So 1, again, is making sure that all provisions of that animal control bylaw apply moving forward. The second one is the enclosed chicken run. So again, just a fenced in area controlling the use of the property for the chickens. And the first one is speaking to a structure to actually house those chickens. So two different components of our bylaw, but ultimately what we're doing here again is noted is the current rural zone will go to the rural residential. So it will be an appropriate zone for that property and then recognizing the existing uses. Next slide, please. So in short, again, we're here for a zoning bylaw amendment. First, I'll call it respectfully asking for the existing uses to be recognized and then also rezoning both portions of our property, both to sever and retain to a more appropriate zone as implemented through the consent application. So we're here seeking to implement the policies and the objectives of the official plan and zoning bylaw, bringing it closer into conformity and ultimately clearing those three conditions of consent approval. So thank you, Council. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions directed my way.
Thank you very much. All right. Does the township's planner, Emily, have anything further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. I do just have a couple of notes to add. So again, the purpose of today's meeting is just to seek comments from the public and council on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I just wanted to reiterate that no decision is to be made on the application today. However, we'd like to use this as an opportunity to gather input on the application and assist staff in determining how to proceed with the application. So just to provide some background on the provisionally approved consent that brings us here today, as outlined by Mr. Hunter, as a condition of that consent, the applicants are required to deal with the severed and retained lands through a rezoning. So this is a type of severance that council might be familiar with. It is often referred to as a farm surplus dwelling severance or a farm consolidation. Essentially, this type of lot creation is recognized by the provincial planning statement, which facilitates the severance of the existing farmhouse on a smallest size lot as possible from the larger surrounding farmland, as it was deemed no longer necessary for the day-to-day operation of that farm. This is often seen to facilitate the retirement of farmers or for succession planning. So under the provincial framework, through that process, the applicants are required to rezone the retained farmlands to prohibit any residential use to ensure their long-term use as farmlands. And then subsequently to that, the applicants propose to rezone the severed residential parcel to recognize the more appropriate lot fabric being a rural residential zone. So again, the purpose of today's meeting is just to seek comment and public input on the application. Staff have not completed a detailed analysis of it, but are certainly available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any persons present in person, on Zoom, or on the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Township staff will call upon each registered participant. For those in remote attendance, unmute yourself when called upon and turn on your camera if you wish. All will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course of submitting comments or questions. Emily, anyone registered to speak?
Thank you, Chair. As of this morning, there was no attendees registered to speak to this application.
Is there, there's no one online or on the phone? Okay, anyone in attendance here wish to speak to this? Well, there you go. Well then, that was easy. So, could the township's planner please summarize any additional correspondence that may have been submitted on this application or provide any further information at this point?
Thank you, Chair. We did receive additional correspondence from Enbridge Gas. They stated no objections to the proposed application. However, they reserve the right to amend or remove development conditions. Their response does not signify an approval for the site or development. They further stated that it is a responsibility of the applicant to verify the existing gas servicing would not encroach on more than one property. Thank you.
Does the applicant's agent wish to provide any further information on the application in response to where we're at now? I didn't think you would at this point. Got off easy too. All right. Do members of the committee have any comments?
Yes, Member Kett.
Through the chair.
Does Ted sell eggs? I didn't know he had chickens.
Yeah, through the chair. It's for personal use.
Oh.
He just has limited chickens, but I
Okay,
can ask him maybe for you, he'd
stop by. Thank you.
Member Minnings.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you. Is that better? Awesome. Thank you. Through the chair, James. So the amendment is to restrict future residential lots and building. Is that correct?
Through the chair. So there's two components of it. The agricultural lot, larger land holdings. The rezoning will restrict residential development on that part. And then the second component is to just rezone the retained rural residential to a more appropriate zone, because that's rural. We're going to rural residential and then recognize the existing uses associated.
Okay, thank you. And then just a subsequent question. So the owner is retaining that lot. Like, I'm just trying to remember or think of others applications sort of similar, and it's just for my own understanding that a person may come and sever the lots or look for different designation if they wanted to do a residential, like create a subdivision. So in this case, it's the opposite. It's to prevent that from happening under the current ownership. Is that correct?
Yeah, so through the chair, right now that property is rural, so it would not be permitted for residential development. The client intends to hold both the agricultural lands and the residential. And to be a simple response is it's more succession planning. And then the agricultural parcel is farmed with the adjacent parcels, all with the same farmer. So just efficiency on that aspect as well.
No further questions or discussion? Can we have a motion?
Motion reads that the planning report P 26-005 dated January 21st, 2026, with respect to zoning amendment application file number Z 2520 for the subject lands located at 3900 Minoki Beach Road be received for information, and that comments received at the public meeting be considered as part of any recommendation report for a future council meeting.
Mover? Moved by Member Cox, seconded by Member McIntyre. All in favor? I better turn on my mic. There. All right, public meeting for 2458 Wayman Line. Oh, and thank you, sir. Thank you. Zoning bylaw amendment application. I now call upon the applicant's agent, David Scarcellone from Morgan Planning and Development, to please present the information provided on item F 1.2 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of this application.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is David Scarcellone, Junior Planner with Morgan Planning and Development, and I'm the agent responsible for representing the applicant, Ms. Christine Hiles, for all planning matters as they relate to zoning bylaw amendment application Z-25-15. So if we could just move one slide over, please. Moving out in scope just to the location of the subject property. I know it's quite tough to see on the screen there, but it's located immediately west of Wayman Line, north of Thorburn Road and south of Foxmead Road, surrounded by majority agricultural and rural residential parcels. So if we can move one more slide, please. Moving inward in scope, this is just an aerial imagery of the subject lands, and the image on the right is a zoomed in imagery of the developed portion, just noting the existing structures on the property. On the image on the right, from top right to bottom left, are the existing dwelling, an existing shed to be removed, and followed by the barn, which is used to house livestock. Next slide, please. Moving on to some street view photos of the existing property, just showing the view from Wayman Line. You can see the property is quite well masked by vegetation lining the gravel driveway. And the photo on the right just shows the location of the existing building structure, the topography and vegetation of the property, and just something to know that the existing building structure is building cluster, apologies, is located on the highest point of the property. Next slide, please. Morgan Planning and Development staff did complete a site visit with the applicant, and these photos were taken on that site visit. So from left to right, the photo is of the existing garage to be removed. The existing two-story single detached dwelling with an attached garage, and the existing barn used to house livestock. So moving on to the next slide. Just into a verbal description of the subject property. It has an area of approximately 41 hectares, so it's a 100-acre lot. With approximately 613 meters of frontage along the west side of Wayman Line, and it's accessed, as I mentioned, via a gravel driveway off of Wayman Line. Once again, it's developed with a single detached dwelling, which is rented to a family friend of the applicant currently. A storage shed, as well as a barn used to house livestock, and the balance of the lands are used agriculturally to pasture for the livestock on the property. The vegetation is typified by low-lying shrubbery and tall grass. As I mentioned, the topography is relatively flat, with the building cluster being located at the highest point of the property. Municipal water and sanitary services are not available on the subject property, consistent with most of the rural area of the township of Severn. And therefore, the property is serviced currently with a private individual drilled well and septic system. It's also worth noting that the property is situated on class 1 to 3 soils, as well as organic soils. And it's within proximity to a wetland. However, the proposed development of most of the property is over 120 meters from the feature, and therefore is not adjacent or relevant to the application. If we could skip 2 more slides, please. Moving into the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application, the application seeks to permit the construction of a 2-story detached garage with an 145 square meter additional residential unit on its 2nd story, and that 145 square meters is inclusive of the ARU as well as the 4-story entrance and stairway. The proposed garage is going to be situated within the existing building cluster on the property and will be serviced privately with the existing well, as well as a second septic, which is going to be located northwest of the existing dwelling within the building cluster as well. The 1st story is going to facilitate a 3-door garage, as well as the staircase and entrance to the ARU. And the 2nd story will be a 2-bedroom additional residential unit with a covered deck. The ARU garage will be accessed via an extension of the gravel driveway, and it's also worth noting that the ARU will play host to the applicant and their son. And as previously mentioned, the dwelling currently is rented to a family friend. So if we could just move on to the next slide. Get into the site plan. So as you can see, the larger image is a site plan of the entire property. And you can see a zoomed in excerpt in the bottom left. It's worth noting, as I mentioned, that the proposed garage is going to be located where that shed was that I mentioned on the aerial imagery slide. The septic, as you can see, is located directly north of the garage, as well as northwest of the dwelling, and the well will be used to service the dwelling and the ARU with water. The garage is oriented in a way for viewing pleasure, so that the porch off of the rear will view over the apple orchard on the property to the northwest. And the proposed structure has a building footprint of 140.5 square meters. As you can see in the legend, might be tough to see, but the footprint of the structure is 140.5 square meters. So moving on to the next slide. Just into the zoning of the property. The zoning bylaw amendment will address all deficiencies as they relate to accessory apartment not being permitted in a detached accessory structure, floor area, and building height. And it's worth noting that the principal dwelling has a floor area of 210 square meters, which is much larger than the additional residential unit. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. On to the zoning bylaw amendment text. The application seeks to rezone much of the subject property, with exception of the portion of the property to zone environmental protection from agricultural AG to an agricultural special exception zone. And the site-specific exception will incorporate the following provisions. In addition to the permitted uses currently in the AG zone, a detached additional residential unit in an accessory building will be permitted, and that a 2-story accessory building shall be permitted with the following special provisions: a combined gross floor area over the 2 stories of 281.2 square meters, and a maximum additional residential unit floor area of 146 square meters. As I mentioned, that is including the ARU on the 2nd story, as well as the entrance threshold on the 1st story, as well as the staircase. Maximum accessory building height of 7.8 meters. That's measured from average grade to the midpoint of each trough and the peak. And that the ARU shall be located within 50 meters of the primary dwelling in order to maintain the existing building cluster, which of course is proposed. So if we can move on to the next slide into simplification. elevations of the structure. Or as it mentions, the top left elevation is the east, followed by south in the top right, north elevation in the bottom left, and west elevation, bottom right. As I mentioned, the structure has been rotated about 20 degrees counterclockwise, I believe, just to give the applicant that view of the natural beauty to the north and west properties. So as you can see, the shading as well as the 3 bays of the garage, which are going to be accessed via an extension of the gravel driveway. So if we can move on to the next slide. Into the floor plans. The floor plan on the left is the first story. So as you can see, it includes the 3 bay garages, the 3 garage bays rather, as well as the entrance threshold and the staircase, which are included in the area of the additional residential unit by definition, as well as the second story, which as you can see there, it's a rec room living area on the right side, as well as 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, 2 closets, washer, dryer, as well as the covered porch at the top of the screen. So if we can move on to the next slide. As I mentioned, the property is currently zoned agricultural and environmental protection via environmental protection zone lines, small water courses along the property. And the Township of Severn official plan designates the property as agriculture. And it's also worth noting that the property is designated agricultural, rural, and green lands by the county of Simcoe. Next slide, please. Full application was submitted along with a full planning justification report, which addresses all relevant policy documents, including the Planning Act, provincial planning statement, County of Simcoe official plan, Township of Severn official plan, as well as the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. And once again, just to conclude, the application conforms to the intents and policies of the Township of Severn official plan, County of Simcoe official plan, provincial planning statement, and the Planning Act. And the proposed rezoning will permit a 2-story detached garage with an additional residential unit within its second story in accordance with the special provisions outlined in this presentation. The proposed development will be compatible with the surrounding land uses and will be compatible with the character of the area. And that concludes my presentation. And I'd now like to take this time to say thank you to members of the public, members of council, members of staff for listening. And I'd now like to invite any questions that arise. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Does the township's planner, Brad Oster, have any further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant?
Good morning, and thank you, Chair Brennan. Mr. Scarcelloni's done a good job of providing an overview of the purpose and effect of this application, so I'll be brief in my comments. As noted, there is a rezoning presented today, which does seek site-specific provisions to permit the proposed built form, which includes a detached garage with an additional residential unit above. The site-specific provisions include an increased accessory building height and size, together with requiring that the ARU be within close proximity of that principal dwelling to keep all of the buildings clustered on this agricultural property. A new septic system is proposed to service the ARU, which the building department has advised they had no concerns with. And just a reminder that today's public meeting is an opportunity for members of the public, agencies, and the committee to provide their comments with respect to this application. Council is not being asked to make a decision on this application at today's meeting. This is exclusively a public meeting to receive any comments. Any of the comments that are received will be taken into consideration through a subsequent recommendation report to council when this application returns for a decision, and that report will include a detailed policy analysis by township staff. If there's any questions, happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any persons present or in person on Zoom or the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Township staff will call upon each registered participant. For those in remote attendance, unmute yourself when called upon and turn your camera on if you wish. All will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed on the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course of submitting comments or questions. Brad, are there any members of the public registered to speak?
Thank you, Chair. There are no members of the public registered to speak.
Okay. If there are members of the public who did not get called and who would like to speak, please unmute yourself. Well, no, now. And for those in person, please approach the microphone and give your name and address for the minutes. Going once, twice? Gone.
Thank you, Chair. Only one piece of additional correspondence was received from Enbridge Gas, who advised that they do not object to the proposed application, however, reserve the right to amend or remove any development conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant's agent wish to provide any further information on the application or in response?
Chair, no.
Thank you. Do members of the committee have any comments? Member Cox.
Through the chair to Mr. Oster. We didn't hear back from the Simcoe County Board of Education.
Through the chair to Member Cox, no, we have not received comments from the school board.
Oh, I was just curious because if this has a, a residence that a child might be moving to, and that school's at capacity. So I just wondered if we had heard any more about that, because I wouldn't want someone to move and then find out their child had to go to school somewhere else.
Yes, proceed.
Through the chair to Member Cox, I would just offer that staff could reach out directly to the school board to get their comments, if they have any, prior to this application returning.
I think that would be helpful because I don't want, someone to move there or a new person to move in and not know where the child's going to go to school or which one they thought they would. The other one is on both of these, I mean, it's always there, the future recommendation, and it'll come, the report will be brought back. Do you have any idea, and this is just on behalf of the applicants if they're watching, any idea on when these two application reports would be brought back?
Through the chair, staff would endeavor to bring these applications back as soon as possible. The new council schedule makes that quite easy to bring them back more quickly. So we'll definitely get them here as soon as we
Okay,
can.
no, there doesn't seem to be any opposition or any different things. So I was just wondering, because I know if people are watching, they kind of wonder when. Thank you very much.
No other questions from the committee? Madam Clerk, can we have a draft motion then, please? Yes.
Motion reads that planning report P 26-002 dated January 21st, 2026, with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application file number Z2515 for the subject lands located at 2458 Wayneman Line be received as information. And further, that comments received at the public meeting be considered as part of any recommendation report for a future council meeting.
Mover, please. Moved by Member Burkett, seconded by Member Taylor. All in favor? That motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor.
If there are no further comments, I declare the public meeting closed. Yes, and thank you, sir. Right. Thank you. We move to business items that have been moved from the consent list. We'll start with E 3.2. Planning report 26-001 zoning bylaw amendment for 3332 Muskoka Street, Washago. I'm sorry. Oh, is it 3.3? Oh, we dealt with 3.2. That was just a question. Thank you. I stand corrected. Planning report 26-003 priority updates to comprehensive zoning bylaw 2010-65 as amended. And Member Cox, you'd like to speak to that?
Yes, thank you very much. Through the chair. I pulled this because I think this is a very important report and the public should know. We're doing this comprehensive zoning bylaw, and it's interesting because what the staff have done, which I think is very commendable, is that they pulled the most important areas of recommended zoning bylaw priority updates. And these are all ones that we all know we've heard from our residents on. And I I'm going to defer back to staff in a moment, but the most important thing I think about this is that they've done this and these bylaws, because if they put them all in the main comprehensive zoning bylaw and did one big one, if anybody appealed one thing, these would not pass. They would have to sit and wait. So the fact that we're pulling the important priority ones is a good thing. And also, I spoke to staff and they said that as each one comes up, so some of these may take longer to look at. I'll give an example, maybe, let's say the shoreline residential OP. That may take longer for staff to work through the zoning bylaw amendments on, but ones that have come up quickly can be done. These don't all have to come back at the same time. So I just want to defer to, I think Katie wrote this report, for her to give us a bit of an overview and ensure that we all are clear and anybody who's watching is. Thank you.
Any further comment from the committee? Yes. Go for it, Katie.
Thanks. Through the chair to Member Cox. I think exactly what she said is accurate. So staff, if we can just back up here a little bit, the report speaks to the fact, as council knows, our official plan was approved, mostly approved. There are some non-decisions within the official plan pertaining to employment lands primarily. But our official plan was primarily approved by the county last year. So we only have a set amount of time under the Planning Act to implement a new zoning bylaw, which has to implement the official plan, right? If we think about planning hierarchy in Ontario, the province makes policies, the county makes policies, and then the township makes policies. So everything the township does has to be in conformity or compliance with the county's and the province's policies. So likewise, our zoning bylaw has to conform and be in compliance with the official plan. So we have a set amount of time to bring that into compliance. So what typically would happen is after a municipality does a full new official plan, we would do a full new zoning bylaw. Staff like our zoning bylaw. It's accessible. It's on the website. It has our branding. As council knows, we've been pretty good, I think, at a staff level coming forward with various updates over the years. So we don't think our bylaw is nearly as out of date as, say, our official plan was. You know, we had that official plan from the early 2000s. We really never changed it. We never brought forward housekeeping amendments. We never tried to tidy up things as we went. Whereas the zoning bylaw, we really have tried to tidy things up through the process. So what we're hoping for here is primarily this report is about sole sourcing. So MHBC Barrie did our official plan. Therefore, we do believe that it would be beneficial for them to help us with these zoning updates. We don't have policy planners in-house here. We primarily work on development applications, as council is aware. So it's easy for us to do some little housekeeping changes every now and then, but for us to take official plan policies and craft zoning provisions out of those is not necessarily something in our wheelhouse. And we would look to a consultant for their expertise on what other municipalities do and how to make this work and how to keep it in compliance with all the other legislation required. So as the deputy mayor or member Cox was stating, there are a few of these items that are kind of hotter topics that we as staff would like to see kind of come forward in almost a phase one or a stage one of this. We'd been talking a lot over the last couple of years about ARUs. We had an application this morning for an additional residential unit. So we're hoping that that can come forward relatively quickly, so that what we've been telling people and what we're still hoping for is that people can start using these policies in the summer. Right. So that policy we think is something that can come relatively quickly. And then we're going to look to MHBC for guidance on whatever else we think could come relatively quickly. And then as member Cox was saying, you know, something like the shoreline residential policies, that may take some more time to fully implement and flesh out those policies. So by breaking this up into sections, there's the appeal issue, which we don't hopefully have to deal with if we just are doing smaller amendments. It is also worth noting that ARU policies are not appealable. So that would probably be a standalone bylaw amendment so that we can make sure it goes into place and doesn't get tied up with an appeal. So essentially how we think this will play out is hopefully we'll sole source it, which will be less time than going to an RFP and interviewing consultants and picking a consultant. And because MHBC already is so familiar with our day-to-day operations, our policies, everything we do here, they've been working for us on and off for 6 years, I think. They can kind of hit the ground running and do kind of these easy ones off the top. And then later in the year, looking at kind of more complex ones. And then hopefully, in a year from now, we have some further direction from the county based on the employment stuff, which then will lead to us fixing up the OP, the parts of the OP that are not approved, and then more zoning bylaw amendment after that. So it is going to be kind of a long total process, but we're hoping over the next couple of months and, subsequent over the next year, we can have a few different updates to really start bringing things forward.
And supplemental, so the ARUs, that would include the garden suites? Just
Through
clarifying.
the chair to member Cox. So garden suites are their own animal under the Planning Act, right? You get a special zoning bylaw amendment for a garden suite, and you have an agreement registered on title. That's a special thing, but the ability for someone to convert, if we will, a garden suite into an ARU would be something that may be possible once we have the ARU provisions in place. So, we've talked about this, I think, for example, and Morgan Planning spoke to this morning. One of our policies in the OP, township OP and county OP, is that the gardens, the ARU has to be located within the existing building cluster. So if we had approved a garden suite that's at the far other end of the farm, that's probably not going to meet that provision. So then that's not going to be something that can easily convert from a garden suite to an ARU. So all of these will have to be looked at on a site-specific basis. I think we only have 3 in the municipality. I'm not 100. We don't know what the policies are going to be yet, so we don't know if those are going to fit the policies. It may be that some of those folks, in order to convert them to permanent units, might need a minor variance, or they might need some kind of permissions. But certainly that's part of tying this up. Our earliest garden suite that we know of, actually, the 10 years is up this spring.
Yep.
So it is something that we're actively trying to work on here.
So but what I'm getting at is that will tie up those, help tie that package for those 3 to further move on. Okay, thank you very much.
No further questions on that? Oh, yes. Member Burkett.
Through the chair to Katie. So further to those garden suites, Katie, why could we not refund the people their $15,000? And I think that's what their concern is. Are there going to be monies that we'll have to take out of the 15,000 to convert them if it's allowed to be an ARU now that they are garden suites, and if they're within the housing catchment area that you spoke to?
Through the chair to member Burkett, there's a legal agreement registered on title to these properties. So we'll have to work with the applicants to remove that legal agreement. I believe we have a fee under our fees bylaw to remove that agreement. Plus there'll be some legal associated with removing that. So would they get 100% of their deposit back? No, unless they want to give us different money to then get that deposit fully back, right? There's going to be costs associated with removing those agreements from title.
No, and I understand that. Thank you. But I think the concern is they're happy to remain the way they are, the garden suites, and they may have to be converted to an ARU. The issue is the money that they need refunded. And if there's any way before this consultant comes back, if we can refund, we can't refund them the money.
Through the chair, the legal agreement registered on title states that we hold the money. So unless we want to amend that agreement, which would cost money, then we have to keep that money in place, right? Because the agreement registered on title says we hold that money, which is not an abnormal thing. Lots of municipalities in Ontario have these agreements and hold securities. It specifically says in the Planning Act, the municipality should enter into an agreement regarding a garden suite. I understand some municipalities hold less money, but other municipalities hold more money. It's really not very consistent based on the research I've done. But if these people want to convert to an ARU, hopefully by the end of the year, then we will refund the money as soon as the agreement comes off of title.
So supplementary, if I may, through the chair, you spoke that the one is coming up for its 10-year term in the spring. So what happens with that person?
Through the chair, to be determined. We haven't heard from those folks, and we're not even sure at a staff level that all of the three of them want to become permanent ARUs. They might want an extension as the garden suite. We really don't know. So the one that's coming up in the spring, we anticipate we're going to write to them very shortly with some options. We've just reached out to our lawyer to discuss those options and how to move that forward for them. They perhaps don't realize it's coming up in the spring or don't know what that means. So we're going to work with those folks. The Planning Act has changed in the last 10 years to allow garden suites to be more than a 10-year timeline. So we're hoping that can work to our advantage, but we have reached out to our legal for advice on that.
Thank you.
Yes, Member Taylor.
Yes, through the chair, further to Member Burkett. So there's two in my ward on Irish Line, as you know, and they've been very patient. They thought at one point there was a chance that we'd hold back 2,500, which means we still have money held back. We should pay the remainder out of the 15,000. That's what they're looking for, and I'm confident that 2,500 would cover the legal fees. But the other question to you, Katie, is what does it cost to switch from a granny suite to an ARU? Because these people are expecting us to react that these granny suites are going to be here longer than 10 years, part of the building permit. So that's my two. First is a comment that we could hold back 2,500. And secondly, what does it cost and what's the benefit becoming from a granny suite to an ARU?
So this really isn't a report about garden suites. So we would have to come back to answer garden suite questions. This is a report about ARUs and allowing people to do ARUs. So I really can't answer all those questions at this time. I think what the people who have garden suites need to know is that what we're asking for in this report is council to allow us to get started on ARUs, right? So the coming out of this report is let's get started on these ARU policies. Let's have these ARU policies in place by this summer. So I think that council may prefer staff to work on allowing ARUs for the entire municipality versus trying to figure out how to give someone some money a couple months earlier. Do you know what I mean? We only have a certain amount of staff resources here. So let's, I think, focus on allowing ARUs. And then once we allow the ARUs, these people, if they're converting them to ARUs, can fully get all of their money back. So I don't think there'll be council appetite for us to redirect our attention to focusing on 3 properties when we're trying to allow ARUs for the entire municipality.
Yeah, just a supplemental. It was a previous council that this has been going on over 4 years. So, and you mentioned ARUs and granny suites. That's why I brought it up.
Thank you. Member Cox.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because I was led to believe, and I'm sure the people were led to believe, that once we got into this ARU zoning bylaw, that was their opportunity to apply. So that still holds, that when this goes in, that's their opportunity to apply, to change to an ARU and get their money. Thank you very much. That's all I wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Member Burkett, through the chair, and not to carry on, but we promised these 3 garden suite people their money back. And that's what I struggle with. So I think I'd like to see a report. I know that we're not able to talk about it. I need something that comes back and tells us how much money is it going to cost. Like, how much do we have to leave in our township coffers if it's $2,500 or $5,000, and we can refund them the other monies? Because this has gone on far too long, and we've promised them that we were going to refund them the money.
In this case.
So through the chair, we will be refunding all of the money. We will not keep any deposit money once the agreement is removed from title. But I don't see a lot of value in trying to figure out how to refund some of the money, which would mean changing the agreement on title in the interim. Because probably, I'm very hopeful that in 6 months from now, we can refund all of their money. So let's not waste time and staff resources trying to refund some of the money in the next 6 months.
Okay, supplementary if I may. So you told me before that we'd have to take some of the monies to get it removed off a title, right? So they're not going to get refunded all their money. But all I need is a commitment that in 6 months, we're going to give them their money back. That's what I need. Not because we've been stringing these people along for years. It hasn't been 1 year. It hasn't been 2 years. I know the Planning Act has changed, but it isn't fair. Okay.
So through the chair, I cannot guarantee that because that would be a decision of council. Council will have to pass a zoning bylaw amendment to allow ARUs. First step. Second step, all of these folks will have to come in and pay the fee, which is outlined in our fees and charges bylaw, to have an agreement removed from title, right? Because there's something registered on title to their property that says the municipality holds that $15,000. So either they'll pay that fee or they'll give us a letter that says, take money out of my deposit account that we hold and put it towards that fee. Then we'll bring a report to council to try and authorize that to come off of title. So that's the process, unfortunately, we have to follow. All of these folks signed these agreements. They all knew what they were getting into. 10 years ago, we weren't talking about ARUs. So the people that did this 10 years ago fully committed 10 years ago to having this on their property for 10 years. And at that time, there was a chance for extension, but there was not a chance to make them permanent. I know over the past 5 years, we've been talking about making these permanent, and we still are going down that road. And I think it's very important to realize that we're almost there.
Member Cox.
And these people know this, and through the chair. Katie has sent emails and Andrea have sent emails to the people explaining that once this ARU would go through, then that would be the time, the zoning bylaw, that would be the time to work with the staff to figure out what to do. This isn't something that we just didn't do. I've been speaking to them, they've been speaking to them, and they understand this process. And I spoke to them, and so did Katie, when this zoning bylaw was going to be brought forward and we were going to do it earlier. And so they've been kept up to date. They know what's going on. So it's just a matter of time, and they realize that. Thank you.
Yep, Madam CEO, and then.
Thank you. I think we need to bring it back to we're sole sourcing a zoning bylaw amendment, but maybe just one final comment on that. And I think Katie was sort of touching on it. The planning rules changed. So when they applied for a garden suite, it was always going to be a garden suite, and they couldn't have it forever. So they're lucky that it can go permanent, but that was the luck of the rules. So they did know what they were getting into, and I don't believe we've strung them along. We have communicated well throughout. But we really should get back to what's on the agenda today, which is about proceeding with the zoning bylaw amendment, which is bigger than ARUs.
Thank you. Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair. So can we go through these, unlike previous housekeeping amendments, the recommended zoning bylaw priority updates require expertise in various areas as noted below. Can we go through some of these just so I can get some clarity? Sorry, I didn't tell you beforehand because I did. So ensuring the environmental protection and the Greenland designation. So I struggled down at the county when I talked to the planner down there. How did they arrive at all these Greenland? So he basically said that our planning staff can work with whoever the ministry was using as they flew over our township and saw some water, saw some farmland that they designated as Greenland. We could go back and argue with them, or not argue with them, maybe point out that, some of the rock out in Ward 1 is not Greenland. Is that something that the consultant is going to look at as far as the designation on Greenlands that we now have within our municipality?
Through the chair to the mayor, the quick answer there would be no. However, the county is currently undertaking an exercise to better map their natural heritage. So if the county does an amendment or a new OP that refines that Greenland mapping, then we could also refine the mapping in our OP. But that's not really on the table for this short-term project. What's more on the table here is that we have a new OP that has a Greenland layer and an environmental protection layer. Those are more more accurate, I'm not saying they're perfect by any means, than what is currently in our zoning bylaw because they're more up to date. So it's a requirement of the province that our zoning bylaw conforms to the official plan. So we need to make sure whatever's designated environmental protection in the official plan is zoned environmental protection in our zoning bylaw.
So Katie, supplementary through the chair, if I may. So will the county reach out to our planning staff to ask, like, the areas that they have now as Greenland, what our thoughts are, and maybe remove some? Is that how it will work, or no?
Yeah, through the chair, the county's been doing their MCR, Municipal Comprehensive Review. They started that process, I don't know, a long time ago, 3-4 years ago. And it's been at the province for approval for years with COPA 7. So part of that project that they're still working on is that refinements to the Greenlands mapping. Andrea and I have been circulated over the years with different things. They have an environmental consultant working for them to try and help with this project. Both the county OP and the township's new OP allow landowners to hire an environmental consultant for their own property if they think their property is incorrectly mapped. And then they don't need an official plan amendment. They can default back to the rural designation. So say you did own some, I don't want to say exposed rock because that might be a rock baron, which then is protected environmentally. But say you owned a rock farm in Ward 1 and you think, why my Greenlands? And you want a severance. You could do an environmental study. And if it's not, if it should not be designated Greenlands, the environmental consultant agrees, then it would default back to a rural zoning. The risk is, then you might have rock baron, which is snake habitat or something, and then you're more protected than when you started, right? So there is definitely some risk there, but that's already an available option in our new OP and the county's OP.
Thank you. So moving on to the next one, conformity for the shoreline residential. So these sleeping cabins, so the Ford government has passed that you can build a shed for 161 square feet. So if you built something for under the 161 square feet, had no water, no electricity to it, could you build a sleeping cabin on your property? Could you build multiple sleeping cabins? Or is that going to be part of this report?
Through the chair, that will be part of the amendment, is looking at that. I can't remember off the top of my head if our official plan only allows one sleeping cabin or if it just generally speaks about sleeping cabins. Currently, our zoning bylaw allows one sleeping cabin if you're in the SR2 or the SR3 zone, but we don't allow them above garages. So this council and previous councils have had a couple rezoning site specific to allow a sleeping cabin above a garage because of there's less footprint, so potentially less impact on the environment. But those are the kind of nitty-gritty details we have to get into with our consultant to see if that's a good idea as of right. Typically, from what I understand from our building department, is it's only a shed that can be 160 square feet. If you're building a building that is to be used for a different purpose, then it's 100 square feet before you need a permit. So technically speaking, if you're building a sleeping cabin over 100 square feet, you need a permit. And no matter how big your building or structure is, it is supposed to conform to the township zoning bylaw.
Okay, so does it, sorry, through the chair, does it apply to commercial properties as well? And ones that are not shoreline residential? Like they wanted on a commercial piece of property, let's say they had trailers and they wanted to put up 6, so I can't, well, I'd like to know where the consultant is going with this and what they're going to bring back as a report. Or should I wait until the consultant comes to us and then talk about what they're going to do? Okay.
Yeah, we really do want to focus
Chair, this
on the sole sourcing.
this report is about
Sole.
hiring a consultant to look at these high priority issues. Zoning bylaws have public processes and all those things, so you'll have lots of time to talk about the details, but that's not what this report is about.
If I may, how long is it going to take for this consultant to come back to us with what is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be a year? Because this is an election year and some of us may not be here to weigh in on this.
I'll take that.
I'm so excited.
Through the chair, I feel like I'm going to say this a lot in the next 8 months. We can't run the municipal business based on it being an election year. We proceed through our business. But the point of this report is some will come faster. The easier ones will come faster. Some of them, faster. I'm going to say 4 to 6 months and other things might take a year because again, there are public processes and timelines, and notice and all those things. So it won't be tomorrow, but we'll get the smaller things done as soon as we can.
We'll take, as long as let's lean on the sole source issue, please. And then we're get ready to go.
Well, I just wanted the reason I brought this forward was because I just wanted everybody to be clear is that they will and they've already stated that the ARU one may come in June. We don't, it just depends how fast it moves. But I just wanted everybody to be clear on they were separately they're being looked at, but one isn't going to depend on all the rest of them being done. And I just wanted to clarify that and to thank you for bringing this forward like this so that other people can understand it.
Thank you. If that's it from this committee, do we have a requirement for a motion?
Thank you. Might I suggest that after this item, we just take a 5-minute bio
Yes,
break would be
absolutely.
appreciated. So motion reads that planning report P26-003 dated January 21st, 2026 with respect to priority updates to comprehensive zoning bylaw 2010-65 as amended be received, and further that council approves the sole source procurement of priority zoning bylaw updates to MHBC Barrie for a maximum amount of 50,000 excluding HST.
Mover, please. Moved by Member Cox, seconded by Member Minnings. All in favor? Motion passes. We will now take a 5-minute break. All right. Are we all just about ready to go? Thank you. Welcome back to our meeting, this portion of the meeting. We are now moving on to E3.6, the interim control bylaw, Coldwater's area of employment. And I'll refer over to Member Cox.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to planning. I understand the rationale, what we were talking about, that interim is appropriate to protect lands from future development while the township and county complete the employment land study. And I understand that we have issues with one property, but I'm worried that the other property owners who are not already permanently based, like, and I might as well declare it here, like the BMR, like they're there. They've got their business. This isn't going to affect them at all. But we do have properties in that employment area that we want to put a control on that are for sale or have just sold. And I don't think that it's fair that people can't carry on doing what they had a plan to do in order to protect some other landowners and what's going on. And I'm trying to be very polite and nice about it. So this is where I have a concern. I don't know, is there exemptions? Is there something we can do? But I don't think it would be right that if we had, and I mean, I'll be honest, the sink factory down the road for me has been for sale. And if that's sold and something could be done, that is a big thing for our area because it's sat empty. So these are questions I have on this, and I did question it before. And so I just would like some answers, please. Thank you.
Through the chair to Member Cox. So essentially, the province says that when you're studying something, you can pass an interim control bylaw in order to place a hold essentially on these properties while you study it. So as council's aware, we talked about this in December. We're starting an employment land study with the county of Simcoe. So we've already kicked that off. Council authorized that last month. And the goal of that employment land study is to identify future employment area for the township of Severn. And when we say employment area, I should actually, be calling it an area of employment because that is defined by the Planning Act. Bless you. Provincial legislation defines an area of employment, both in the Planning Act and in the provincial planning statement. In the provincial planning statement, the municipality needs to protect their area of employment, right? Everyone in the township, we need jobs. The county of Simcoe identified that we are in a deficit in terms of employment lands, and therefore we're doing this study to locate a new area of employment or expand an existing area of employment. In order for it to be an area of employment, it has to be a cluster of properties. So it can't just be a one-off property. It has to be a cluster of those properties where permitted uses under the OP and then probably under the zoning bylaw too, but designated for employment uses. So the township has a couple of these areas. However, this area in Coldwater is the only area in the township of Severn that is, first of all, clustered. Second of all, it's in a settlement area. And third of all, it is capable of being connected to municipal servicing. This is the only cluster in the township that's capable of being connected to municipal water and sewer. Although we don't have a lot of capacity at this moment, we are doing the process to increase capacity. So what staff are recommending, we have talked to our lawyers, we've talked to the county of Simcoe, is an interim control bylaw to protect this one area of employment because it's the only one the township has that's capable of water and sewer. So if an employer came through our economic development office and was looking for an existing factory, this is the only existing factory we have. If they're looking to develop on adjacent lands to a factory with another employment use, because it is hard to develop on adjacent lands to if you're looking for a new industrial use, locating it next to an existing industrial use makes sense. So the proposed, most interim control bylaws totally freeze development. You can't do anything with an interim control bylaw. We did it before for short-term rentals. No one could have a short-term rental. We did it before for cannabis. Nobody could have cannabis. With this interim control bylaw, what we're proposing is that you could still have an area of employment use, which is defined by the Planning Act as manufacturing uses, uses related to research and development in connection with manufacturing, warehouse uses, including uses related to the movement of goods, retail uses and office uses that are associated with uses mentioned above, facilities accessory to uses mentioned above, and prescribed businesses and economic uses. So there still is some things that would be allowed. So for example, as you mentioned, the previous sink factory, it's currently zoned M2. So any of the uses in that existing M2 zone that fit into warehousing or manufacturing would be permitted to be established during this time period. If, for example, someone came along and said they wanted to turn the old factory into a retail store, that would not be permitted because there's no manufacturing that's associated with it. But a standalone retail store is not permitted in the M2 zone anyway. So they would have already had to go through a rezoning to try and get a retail store. So a lot of the M2 uses are actually part of that warehousing and manufacturing because that's our general industrial zone. So there are a couple commercial properties in this mix, but they're vacant. So even if someone had plans for that, they could still submit if they could still submit and get that process going if they wanted to. For example, the C2 zone or the C1 zone, which I think a couple of these properties are, one of these properties is C1, for example, it's vacant. So the time it would take to submit a commercial site plan agreement and get approval of a commercial site plan agreement is likely a year anyway, right? We know that these processes move slow. People would have to submit to deal with the fact that it's in a floodplain. They would have to submit to see how they're handling water and sewer because we have capacity issues for sewer. So we don't have a lot of room for people to connect to the sewer right now. They'd have to look at engineering. We'd have to look at the parking lot design, stormwater. All of those things could be looked at during this year period anyway. We just couldn't issue them a building permit for a use that doesn't meet this definition under the Planning Act. So people could still try to advance their projects if they wanted. What we're saying is that we feel like right now the provincial planning statement, which council must adhere to, says that we have to protect employment lands. This is the only true area of employment that can be serviced with municipal water and sewer. So the study we're doing with the county is trying to identify if we grow an area of employment or if we create a new area of employment. And part of that study is going to be looking at, do our existing areas make sense? Or should they not be designated for this purpose so that in the future, these areas can become retail or they can become a non-employment use in the future? So while we look at all of that, we just want to put a freeze on this. And we wanted to do it through an interim control bylaw so that it's very transparent to people. It's going to be on our website. We're going to send out notice. We're going to tell everyone this is what we're doing. We're doing this study with the county. Be advised, we are looking at new employment lands and we're looking at our existing employment lands. Should the existing employment lands be where they are? And as we talked about last month, it's going to be a very difficult study because no one wants to be next to employment lands. Right? Like no one wants to live next to warehousing or manufacturing. But because we're a municipality that's already very well established, it's going to be very difficult to find lands that are not near anything, but that's what this exercise is going to entail. So it's going to be, you know, this employment study with the county and then a 1-year freeze on things that are not employment related, unless there is a legally existing business on the property which can continue to operate. So for example, the old Timber Mart, I'm not sure what it's called right now, 3 letters, BMR, it's a legally existing use. So it can continue. If they need a new roof, if they want to build a new something, that can continue. It's a legally existing use. And a vacant property, they can't do anything right now anyway, because they would need a commercial site plan and they'd have to go through that process. The M2 zoned properties, most of the permitted uses in the M2 zone properties, like most of those already existing permitted uses, are employment uses already. So if someone, like I said, wanted to put retail in or wanted to put recreation in on an M2 property, they would already need to go through that zoning bylaw amendment process, plus they would need to go through the site plan process. So that's going to be a year anyway. So although someone might think this is hindering development, what we're really trying to do is tell everyone we're studying in employment. This is our area of employment right now, but that doesn't mean in 2 years from now, this will be our area of employment. It means the province tells us we have to protect our existing areas of employment. And that's what we're trying to do here is protect this while we do the study to try and find other employment lands.
Okay, supplemental then, if we're going to keep this clear and transparent, then that means when we're looking for employment lands, people should be aware that where we're looking could be their property or could be property off Highway 12 and 400, because those are lands that we could look at. And explain the process. So if I owned a piece of property coming out of Coldwater and it's designated, I don't know, rural or whatever, the township then, how does this work? When we're looking at employment, does the consultant then come back to tell you and then tell these people that we'd really like to make this? And do they have to give their permission? I think we need to be very clear on this. Thank you.
Yeah, so how we anticipate this going, the best example I can think of, although it's not great, is the city of Aurelia process right now that they're going through. They're looking at a settlement boundary expansion. City of Aurelia is a settlement boundary, right? Its municipal borders are a settlement boundary. We have settlement boundaries within our municipal borders. So the way this usually happens is that you would take, for example, Coldwater, the map settlement area, and you would put the constrained mapping around that, just as Aurelia did to us in Severn. So you would map what's environmentally protected, what has high agricultural soils, all of the constraints, perhaps soil type, transportation constraints, transportation opportunities. So it's basically a constraint mapping exercise that should lead you to where the employment lands should be located. So we do envision that this is going to become a very public process, and we're going to invite people, just as you're saying, we want people to know, hey, we're looking for areas of employment. It might be next to you. You should stay involved. You should pay attention to this. You know, I think we've talked about it last month. There are definitely constraints associated with our MTO corridors in terms of building right next to Highway 11 and Highway 12. MTO has very limited access possibilities off those two highways, and of course, no access off the 400. But that's what areas of employment look for, is that easy access to those core transportation corridors. So of course, that's why Coldwater has come up in this conversation, because it has Highway 12, it has the 400, and it has a rail line. Right. And as we're aware, there is some potential activity with a rail spur also coming to this area. So it's just really important that we follow that provincial direction and protect the existing employment lands we have, while also saying, hey, we already know we have a deficit, right? Because we know people have come forward trying to redesignate some of our employment lands. And we've said no, because the county identified a 37-hectare deficit in employment lands. So we can't take any current employment lands and convert them to residential or to retail or a non-employment use until we go through this study with the county, which we're hoping will only take place over the next year. An interim control bylaw is only good for a year. You have to come back to council if you want to extend it for another year. It is appealable. Someone might appeal this to the OLT. However, the grounds for appeal typically are if you're doing the process correctly. So if you are doing a study, which we are doing, and if you have reason, to put this in place, which, because this is the only area in the municipality that's an existing area of employment capable of connecting to municipal services, we think this is an area, at least for the short term, we need to protect. Long term, the county study might identify 60 hectares somewhere else, and then we don't need these employment lands anymore.
Thank you very much.
Member Mennings and then Member Burkett.
Thank you. Through the chair. So I have a couple of questions. For this parcel of land that's in the report, the big blue area that's designated employment lands, area of employment, what percentage of it is vacant right now? Or conversely, what percentage of it is actually active businesses being operated?
Through the chair to member Minnings, I'm not great at math, so I don't think I could tell you a percentage.
Well, like 10%, 90%, 50%, or if you don't know, that's okay too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, you can see kind of in the air image there, the developed properties. So all of the developed properties have active businesses on them, with the exception of one, which I believe, although it has a building, is currently vacant or not utilized. But otherwise, yeah, I think you can just kind of see from the air imagery there. So I'm not sure percentage wise what that would transfer into.
Okay, so when I look at it from this aerial image, it looks like easily less than half. So I don't, without an amount, I don't know what we're talking about. And I guess my second question then is, for the vacant businesses or buildings that are in this area of employment, how long have they been vacant or not operating as businesses? Is this a recent development, or has business not been operating and the vacant and the buildings that are not being used?
Through the chair to member Minnings, I believe there's only one building that's currently underutilized or vacant, and it has the company there, I believe, went into financial hardship a couple years ago. I'm not sure the exact number.
Okay. And then my other question is, you mentioned that there's an employment land study going on right now with the township and the county of Simcoe. When did that start?
Through the chair to member Minnings, there was a report on the December agenda. Council passed a motion in December authorizing the study. So we actually started it in December.
It was started. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So it's just started. And you had said it would probably be ongoing for a year, which would then align with this interim control bylaw you're going after. Then my other comment is that this focuses solely on employment lands in Coldwater. And you mentioned because it's got the highway, Highway 12, Highway 400, it's got a rail line, it's got water and sewer capabilities, whatever. There's also other areas in the township that have highway corridors, Highway 11. I'm talking about part of Ward 3, my ward, Ward 4 and Ward 5. There are employment lands on there, commercial, industrial, and I know there's some in progress too to be built up. So, and there is a rail line that goes through Washago. So I'm just wondering why we're focused on this. And my concern would be that this employment land study that's going on, I've only been hearing about this parcel of land and Coldwater. So I just would like to know that it's more comprehensive, because not all the employment lands or future employment lands are or should be in Coldwater. I just want to make sure that that's something that's part of this study.
Through the chair, I believe we discussed this in December, that we will be looking at the entire township for the employment land study. The reason we're bringing this particular area forward is because the definition of area of employment from the province says that it has to be a clustered part. So although we have other industrial or true employment uses in the township, we have very few other areas where they are clustered. So remembering that commercial and retail is not an employment use, neither is an office space or institutional. There's very few other areas of the township that have this cluster of true employment uses. And where we do have this cluster in other places in the township, it's not in an area that's capable of being hooked up to municipal water and sewer. So that's what makes this area unique. A lot of different manufacturing type facilities require water and sewer. Some don't. Dry warehousing doesn't require water and sewer. Certainly we'll be thinking about all of those things during this process. And that's why we are looking at the entire township through this employment study. But in the interim, the planning legislation from the province says we need to protect our employment lands, especially because we have a deficit. So what staff are trying to do here is just bring forward that protection the province tells us to do while we look at the future employment possibilities all throughout the township over the next year with the county.
Thank you. So I'm aware of what was brought forward in December and the conversations then. It was just that the comments today were things like, this is our only area on a major highway corridor, and it's our only area on with a rail line. And I was just making a point that it's actually not, even though this is what we're talking about today. My last question is, what's the public process, if any, during this study, or does it have to wait until the study's gone on? Because I'm sure that the residents of Coldwater and certainly other residents would have an opinion on future use of this, regardless of what the employment study comes out with it or not.
Through the chair, the interim control bylaw is not subject to a public process. It was not subject to advance notice. It's only subject to notice posted on our website after the fact. However, in the report, we have outlined that we are going to give notice to the impacted property owners as well. The process for the employment study with the County of Simcoe, we certainly want it to be public. We want public engagement in this. So as soon as we're at a stage where we have that constraint mapping I talked about, and we have some potential ideas based off those constraint mapping, then I think we'll be going to the public with those to get feedback into that study. So I'm not sure exactly when that public process is going to start, but certainly we're going to, put some stuff on our website about the area, about the employment study with the county, as well as the interim control bylaw should council pass it. And we just really want to try and put that out there and hopefully get some community engagement surrounding that.
Thank you. I just have one final question because I need to be clear in my mind on this. Without an interim control bylaw for the next year, what's the risk? The study is already happening. Why are we doing the interim? Why is that the recommendation?
Through the chair, the recommendation actually is for full transparency. So we don't want someone to come along in 3 months from now and say, hey, I bought this property. I've done all these studies. I'm going to put in a public park here. And we say, hold on, we have designated that area employment. It's not as simple as just saying you're putting in a park here. You might be able to do that in a year from now. But right now, we have this as an area of employment. So you can only do employment uses. So we really want to push out that messaging that this is our protected area of employment. And you should be cautious with what you're thinking about doing here in terms of economic development. We've gotten a lot of inquiries recently through our economic development officer about these properties and the future of these properties in terms of retail and things like that, which unfortunately don't really go anywhere right now because we don't have water and sewer connection, like we don't have sewer capacity, but we just want to, it's a planning tool, right? So people who are really in the know when they're looking at properties, they're looking at the official plan designation, which is not approved by the county. Our employment stuff is not approved by the county. So they're looking at an OP from 2005. And then they're looking at our zoning bylaw and they're thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll submit to change the zoning. So then they're putting money into studies and putting money into other things to try and get to that point. So we want full transparency in that you can do all those studies. You can try and proceed down that road, but just a word of caution right now, this is our area of employment, but it might not be in the future. And that's a way to push this out, is to really focus on saying, this is an area of the township that we right now know is an area of employment, but it might not be in 2 years. So just proceed cautiously.
Thank you. First, member Burkett and then member Jansen. Okay, you go ahead first. Then.
Sure, thank you. I support putting in the interim control bylaw. I know that this study is about to go on. I think that we should determine whether or not there are other areas of employment that we can have in our township. And then we can put to rest what's going to happen with this cluster or some of the properties within this cluster. My only question is, in the time we've been having this discussion, I took a look at the GIS mapping on Simcoe County. There is a property right across from Foodland that's not included in the cluster. And it is zone C1. I'm wondering if that if there's a reason why it wasn't included.
Through the chair to member Jansen, we didn't include that property because of the proximity to the Coldwater River. The development area on that property is very limited. Although it's kind of a large property, when you factor in the setbacks and the potential flooding there from the Coldwater River and then the setbacks from Coldwater Road, there's really not a very large development envelope there. So we just didn't think that that would really suit itself to a true employment use.
Supplemental, the property I was thinking about was, or looking at, was actually across from Foodland, across Brandon Avenue.
Yeah, so through the chair, the reason we didn't include that particular parcel is because of the frontage on Brandon Avenue. So because of that intersection there, we believe that any access to that property will be off of Brandon Avenue. And we also thought that that is kind of a good buffer piece. Again, we don't know if this is going to be fully developed as employment lands, this whole cluster, but if it were, we thought that was a good kind of commercial buffer between the employment uses and that adjacent subdivision, and continuing starting that commercial corridor of downtown Coldwater in that area. So that's why we didn't include that parcel. Sorry, I thought you were talking about across Coldwater Road.
No problem. Thank you very much for the explanation.
Thank you, through the chair. Okay, Katie, so I understand the interim bylaw and I'm happy to support it. My concern, in today's world, we have an empty building, a huge building that's zoned M1. Should someone buy this building and the interim bylaw will restrict, I guess, open it, whatever they so choose to do. But the M2 zoning, if they wanted to do something like, does the M2 zoning, I'm not familiar with it without looking it up, does it only allow for industrial uses? Because this whole area has been vacant for years, for at least, I want to say 30 years. There hasn't been an industry here. To find someone now, not like on the ones that are vacant, not the ones that are there now have been there. No, I understand that. But the ones that are vacant, no one has come forward and bought a piece of property. To find a buyer in today's world with what's going on, and I'll look to our real estate agent, member McIntyre at the end, to buy a building like that and knowing the restrictions that are on that building, and I don't want to discuss the restrictions, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone to buy that. We do have a prospective buyer. I think the person may have bought it. So how can we help that person? So you're saying it's going to be a year, and I don't know when someone applies for a mortgage, I don't know whether they're paying cash or they have to go through the bank. And you may not have the answer for this. Maybe member McIntyre does. If an interim control bylaw is placed on this whole piece of property now, does that hinder the sale of this building? Does that hinder anything? Like, and I understand it takes time if you want to change the zoning on it. And I doubt very much they're going to use it as a sink factory. They're going to use some other use. And I know it does take time to go through the process, but if this building is sold, how can we help this person move it along so that in the year when the interim bylaw is up, they're ready and are able to open for business? Because time is money when you're investing in something like this.
Through the chair to member Burkett, I'm not sure exactly. I'll just start where I think you were going with this. So the M2 zone is our general industrial zone. And basically general industrial is what an area of employment is supposed to be. It's supposed to be warehousing and manufacturing, research and development connected to those things. There are uses in the M2 zones that would not be permitted through this interim control bylaw, such as a dry cleaning establishment. In reality, no one's opening a dry cleaning establishment there, so that's probably irrelevant. But if they wanted to, so they have an empty factory. The quickest way to have development at that empty factory is to have another factory or to use it as warehousing because it's one giant building. Those uses would still be permitted under the interim control bylaw. If you wanted to have a different use, so for example, a greenhouse is permitted right now on that property. Well, a greenhouse would require a change of use permit from the building department. We would not be able to issue that permit because of the interim control bylaw if it was in place. So it just really depends on the type of use they're looking for. If they want to manufacture something in that building, we would issue a change of use permit for that. If the change of use permit requires any changes to parking, right? Each of these uses comes with a parking demand. If that requires a change to parking, now they need a commercial site plan agreement. Plus whatever other, they might need a minor variance, they might need a rezoning, all of those things. So if it was going straight from they used to make sinks and now they're going to make, I don't know, desks. If they're going to make desks now, they probably don't need a change of use permit, right? So then that you would still be able to continue. But if someone wanted to open a school there, they would need a record of site condition. They would need a site plan agreement. They would need a rezoning. All of those things would take a year at least.
So if they wanted to put something towards recreation or have a facility where you did exercise, what would be the process that they would have to go through to get approval? And if the interim bylaw is approved, are they able to apply and go through that process? And hopefully in a year when the interim bylaw is finished, they're able to open.
So through the chair, a private park or a gym exercise facility is not currently a permitted use in the M2 zone. So they would have needed a zoning bylaw amendment anyway in order to permit that type of use. And then they would have needed a commercial site plan agreement. So it is highly unlikely that they would have needed a record of site condition to go to to change the use with the Ministry of the Environment. So those three things would be extremely unlikely to happen within a year. Could they do the studies and go through, start all that process within the year? Absolutely, they could, but that would be at their own risk. But development's always at someone's own risk, right? You don't know if you're going to get approval until it's before council.
And sorry, Katie, so even if someone purchases that and they're going to change the use on it and they're going to have to change the zoning if they don't want to continue with the factory style environment, it still is a process that they'd have to go through, and they're able to do it even though we've put an interim control bylaw on that piece of property, correct?
Through the chair, they could start their process, right? They could do their plans, their studies, but they would be doing all of that full well knowing that we're studying this issue. Whereas right now, someone might already be doing that process without knowing we're studying this issue. And that's why we're trying to put it out there as loudly as we can that we're studying this issue.
But even if we're studying it, Katie, it doesn't mean we're going to change the zoning on this or not allow them to change it. It's ultimately, it would have to come back to council for that decision, right?
That's correct. Every zoning change has to come through council. That's correct.
So at that time, after the consultants have come to us with their findings, we ultimately can say if, for example, that sink factory, if we wanted to change the zoning on it, we could. It would be up to council, correct? All right, thank you.
Member Cox, okay. Who's up first? Can I go with Member Cox first, and then maybe it'll be part of your answer?
But here's the problem. It's only for a year, but if it comes back in a year and somebody up here decides they want it another year, that screws the person who's been working at it for a year. So the only thing I think if we want to do this is we have to say 1 year and 1 year only, because we can't just say here and you're saying, oh, it only takes a year, and the man and the woman who's got this wants to do it, and in 1 year from now, council turns around and says, no, we're going to do it for another year, and this person has just spent all this money and time.
Through
This is where I'm worried.
Yeah. Just, all right. Director of Planning, please.
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Cox, I just wanted to touch upon what Member Burkett said in his previous comment about what can landowners do. I think it's really critical that they also need to participate in this employment land study. They need to make our consultant aware of what their proposed uses are, what ideas they have, and that sort of thing. So there's kind of two processes here. There's the interim control bylaw, and then there's the supporting study. And we would encourage, as Ms. Mandeville noted, we're encouraging through the public process to hear from these landowners, you know, in terms of their future plans and how that's all going to factor into the bigger picture. So I just want to make sure that that's also really stressed here, that we need participation from the landowners in this. Thank you.
So my question.
Through the chair, I'm not sure that you are, I think you could say that you're not interested in it being extended, but I don't think there's a way to build that into the bylaw. I haven't seen any bylaws that are that, and it will be the next council that would decide ultimately if it was extended or not. But I mean, you know, we're on YouTube right now, so I think the wishes of council would be noted, and then it would be up to the next council if staff brought it forward, or if council directed it to be brought forward for an additional year.
Have some faith in future councils, huh? Member Burkett?
Through the chair, I just, you know, again, I go back, I sit on the Economic Development Committee, I chair it. To find dollars or someone to invest in our community is very tough today, very tough. So we have someone that's investing in buying an old building, a warehouse building, and they're going to change the use on it. We should applaud them and welcome them with open arms. And we should help them or help the person in every which way we can. Like this interim control bylaw, we all understand why we're doing it. We can't say it because it was in camera, but this investment is huge, and it's huge for the village of Coldwater, and the intentions that the owners, what they plan to do and bring to our community is immense. And I don't know how we can help and protect this person, but we need to. That's all I'm saying, is that this is huge for someone that lives in our area as a small owner, business owner. To find someone that's going to invest and pay those dollars is very rare.
Katie.
Through the chair to Member Burkett, I think it's also very important that you think about the health of the township rather than the prospects of one or two owners. The province very specifically says we need employment lands. The county identified we are in a deficit of employment lands. Council is well aware of another business that's proposing to invest a substantial amount of money into something that we anticipate will have spin-off warehousing demand created from that. So I think it is a very large, complicated issue. And I think we really need to think about this employment study as the best opportunity for the township to try and identify those employment lands and think about, you know, just taking a pause, although a year seems like probably a long time to a lot of people in the land use planning world. It is really a very short amount of time if we think about how long it took for us to work on our OP, how long it takes to do land use planning policy documents. So I think it's just important to think about the economic health of the township as a whole and where we think the growth is going in the future. And again, we're not saying nothing can happen on these properties. We're saying that employment uses have to happen on these properties. So hopefully whoever is buying the factory will get a factory use, even temporary, or a temporary warehousing use to go in there and make utilization of that building while we figure all of this out. I think, you know, that's a best case scenario situation, but certainly, you know, we're well aware of some economic development opportunities that have come our way recently through our new position or our newer position. And I think we just really need to focus on what's best for the township as a whole in the long term.
Supplementary, if I may, through the chair. And thank you, Katie, for that. But again, I'm going to have to argue with you and not agree, because even when this study is done and the employment lands that the consultant may look at, the province ultimately has to weigh in on this, correct? We can take farmland, virgin farmland that is adjacent to highways, based on a consultant's interpretation of what they come back with. We can convert them to employment lands. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the province may weigh in if the county of Simcoe decides to expand our settlement area, then it would have to be expanded through the county official plan. But if our new employment lands are not expanding a settlement area, then the province does not weigh in. So it just kind of depends how this process goes. And certainly it may be that vacant farmland becomes new employment lands. You know, vacant farmland can be brought into a settlement area as long as you demonstrate that it's the least constraint property. Right? That's why, you know, Aurelia is looking at taking vacant farmland from the township of Severn and putting it into their settlement area. So it is possible. We just have to go through the process outlined by the provincial planning documents.
Thank you, but supplementary for me, but that's a whole different, that's not the same as what we're trying to do. Well, only because the province has mandated the city of Aurelia needs to expand their boundaries because of growth. So farmland automatically gets converted.
So-
I don't want to go down that. Okay.
No,
All
but-
I'm saying is that we've got all kinds of employment lands vacant that we can do nothing
We
with.
don't. We
We
don't
do.
have a lot of
We don't
vacant
have a lot.
employment
We
land.
have a huge section that's out on Highway 11 at Stewart's that we have had for years, 40 years
so
that no one has touched.
Through the chair,
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue.
council will recall, we are in a deficit of employment lands, right? The county of Simcoe identified through the MCR that we have a deficit of employment lands. So although it would appear we have some vacant employment lands, we do not have enough for our prospective growth, right? So that's what we're talking about here is where do we add these new ones? And it is possible that they will be brought into a settlement area, not necessarily Coldwater, or they may not be brought into a settlement area. But that's through that process we're about to begin through the employment study.
Madam CAO, then Member Cox and Member Minnings.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe through the chair, flip the mayor's thinking a little bit because I understand you're interested in helping the prospective buyer or the buyer or whatever. But without having a plan of what the holistic picture looks like, by allowing that business to go ahead without a plan, you may be impeding the future businesses to come. Like I have no idea what the plan is for that business right now, but if it's a park or it's a gym, then maybe a factory next door is not appropriate. So by going forward without a study, you're impacting everyone else that may have the opportunity to bring an Amazon warehouse or something that brings a lot of employment. So there's two sides to that coin that I think you need to think about. And I think Member Minnings has to go. So I think she's hoping that we call the vote pretty soon.
Yep, just.
Yeah, okay. My thing is expanding settlement areas, new tech's already been blocked. The province sent down and said, no, you can't do it until we look at this study. So these employment lands I know are important and I understand they're important, but I just don't want to sit here and we're being transparent, I want to be transparent enough to say to anybody out there who's watching us, who may be interested in these pieces of parcels of land in Coldwater that we're going to put this interim bylaw on. We can't guarantee you that in a year, this interim bylaw is going to be lifted. And you're going to go through everything and you're not going to know. That's the only thing I want to be made very clear here.
Mhm.
And that scares me if we're looking to say to people, you got a year, make your plan and come on in and develop. And then another council or whoever's here says, no, we don't want to do that. Or the province does it. Because I was totally surprised with New Tech. They went out there and they worked with the province and they worked with the county and they did everything they were supposed to do to have employment land. And the province said to them, and I think it's been another couple of municipalities, just a minute now, we haven't decided. And once again, they're back into our area of expertise, but they're telling us it's okay, we can do what we want. So there's where my problem is. Thank you.
Thank you. And Member Minnings.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to call the vote.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion having been put to the floor to call the vote. So the motion reads that planning report P26-004 dated January 21st, 2026 with respect to an interim control bylaw for Coldwater's area of employment be received and that the interim control bylaw be brought forward immediately for council consideration.
Mover. Moved by Member Minnings, seconder. Seconded by Member Cox. All in favor?
Okay, motion is defeated.
Thank you, Kate. All right. So we're up to E 4.3, the Shadow Creek Canal dredging request. And Member Cox.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking to this because I talked to Judith and James. James, yes, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I can look at you when I speak. But anyway, my whole idea on this is is that we need to have a report brought back on this. And what I'd like to see in the report, and this is why I'm speaking to it, I just didn't want it to get lost. And because I'm pretty sure we know, or planning has said that we don't own that. M&R probably owns that canal or somebody. So I just didn't want to come back saying we're out of it. I think the residents need some help and guidance. They've stated about the Dougal Canal in Aurelia. I've given a whole bunch of information to the clerk that I've found. They need help with that. And the fact that these so this association, you have to go out and ask and get everybody to be on board. And it's hard to do that for people to go out and say, this is what we're doing and this is what we're not doing. So anyway, I think what we need to be able to help these people with is option one, if we dredge it, here are the steps and this is what's going to happen. And this is what needs to happen. Here are the steps if we pick option two, which is looking at the Dougal Canal. Can we make that agreement with this association? And number three would be helping them figure out a way to either have it put on their tax. They can go back and talk to their association members to find out if they're in agreement, but does it do what the Dougal Canal does? They have a committee, it comes to the city of Aurelia, they have a budget, and this year it was at 6,000 something. City of Aurelia says, great, takes the 6,000, divides it into how many houses are on the Dougal Canal, and that's what's on their tax bill, and that's what happens. And I'm sorry, back to option three. Option three is the fact that they've got invasive species in the canal. They've got millwort, right? I don't know all the names of them. Anyway, thank you very much. And the problem is they need help with that and knowing what to do. And this might be something where our association or affiliation with the SSEA may come in handy to help them find the proper methods and how to do this and the cost. So I think what I'm asking, I know what I'm asking. I'm asking that we give the association the information to take back to their members and figure out how they can make this work to keep that canal cleaned up and not become a cesspool and environmentally not, something that we all want. Did we can't speak. You can't speak. I'm sorry. But close enough? Yeah. Yeah. But I'm sorry. It is. And we need to help. And I know that when we did it, we dredged it years ago. It was like a municipal drain. Each property paid so much, and it can become like, and I can't remember the name of it because it went straight out of my head. It's like when you put a street light up and it's excuse me. Yes, Madam CEO. No, but I know, I'm just can't remember the name of you.
Local improvement.
Pardon?
Local improvement.
Local improvement. But we just need to give them the information so they can digest it, take it to their association and figure out what to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I may suggest there's some significant issues related to this in Aurelia. There's lots of people who know the ins and outs of this locally. Anyway, yes, Madam CEO.
Thank you. I'm trying to think of how not nicely to not rain on the deputy mayor's parade. Council can certainly direct a report. It will be a challenge for us to do because this is definitely not our area of expertise, but a few things to think about. The Dougal Canal, my understanding from planning, looking at the GIS, is the city owns the land around it. So this is a whole different animal. We don't own the lands around it. It's not a municipal service that we provide. We don't do dredging. We don't do water weed control. Like I think about if you start down this path, where does it end? I mean, the owners who live on Sparrow Lake, all their access is totally weedy. Then are we then going to then clean up weeds in lakes? It's just not a municipal service that we provide. Council did do it in 1999, but it was under a different municipal act. And I think you just decided everybody paid their assessment. You would have to go through a whole public process and have the frontage assessed and, all of the things that the municipal act requires now. We just don't have the resources. It's not a service that we provide. So we can do a report. That's what it's going to say. And I think it's a lot of effort for not something that we should get involved in.
Supplemental. But what is so hard about just saying in a report, maybe what you said, but with a positive spin on it? Like, what is so hard to say? We're not going to provide a service for them. They just need to know where to go and what to do. I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that maybe they should come in and sit down and talk. Maybe they should come in and talk to you about it. But I believe that we as a council know more and our staff know more. They have better contacts than the people in the association. And if they've reached out just for some help, they're not saying take it over. I mean, if they are, we can't take it over. I know that we don't own it. But I just believe that this is why we're here, is to offer our intelligence and service, to give them some information to figure out where to go.
Thank you. Madam Clerk. Or, Madam CEO, sorry.
Sorry, I appreciate your desire to help. I think that's assuming that we know how to help. And because it's not a municipal service we provide, it's like asking us to help them find a doctor. Like that's just not a municipal service that we provide. So we can research it and we can figure it out if that's what council wants, but it takes resources and it may or may not amount to too much.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? No. Oh, sorry. Yes. Member McIntyre.
Yes, through the chair. How many people are affected on this canal? How many residents are there that have 35?
Sorry, it's not a public meeting, sir.
Okay.
So you'll have
So
to
does the township know, staff? Is it about 35? It seems I'm kind of swaying a little bit towards Member Cox. Every now and again, we could do a good turn from this table to do something to help out a group of people that are asking for our assistance. We're more equipped than those other 35 people to do something. What it is, I don't know. The CAO's got a point. We could have the weeds in front of my place in the Severn River. I'd like them taken care of too. So, but I do have an empathy towards the situation with these 35 years. They've been doing what they can, and we have done it in the past, and that's sort of a precedent to some degree. So I don't know where we go from here, but if I'm ready to listen to somebody's thoughts on it.
Member Burkett.
Thank you, through the chair. I do have documentation of someone that lives on the canal. I do have the numbers and the people that contributed. So I'll provide that for you. It is, I didn't realize in your letter that the city of Aurelia owned that canal. This one here is different. So that ownership is not by the township of Severn. So again, to Madam CAO's point, I know that you'll understand that I'd want the weeds cleaned up in front of my place as well. So it's not just a matter of the canal, but I know that it was the residents did pay before on frontage, and I do have, you have all that. Yeah. So I don't know what more we could, but I'm happy to sit with you to see if there's something we can do, or any of us can. But as far as, but we can talk about that later. We can talk about that. I'm happy to speak to that. No, we're sorry you can't speak. Sorry.
Yeah, you can't speak. I can just echo, I'd be concerned as well. I have off of, in my ward, there are issues with the dredging as well. And no, it's silt roads. And there's been a lot of conflict between the different owners Some don't pay, some do pay, but I can certainly put you in touch with some people who have firsthand experience with that, in my view, fiasco. And yeah, I would be very cautious from our, if it ain't ours, we got enough headaches. That's. If there's, there's one more. Okay, go ahead.
Just a final question. If there's invasive species in the canal, don't we have some responsibility about that? I mean,
No, we're funding, as you know, we're trying to fund efforts to control that as best we can through our, like SEA and so forth, but absolutely not. At one time when I was with for the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, the entire, like Georgina was just so upset over weeds that it became a major issue provincially. And it costs money to deal with those. Like, it's complicated and it's beyond municipal. Madam Clerk, please.
So I need to know the direction of council so I can put it in motion. Is it to refer for a report or receive for information and take no action?
Yes, let's try that one.
So the motion is then that their correspondence from James and Judith Beedish regarding the Shadow Creek Canal dredging be received for information and no action be taken.
Mover by Member Paquette, second by Member Taylor. All in favor?
So then coming out of committee, so motion is that committee rise and return back to formal council session to receive a report on the proceedings of the committee of the whole.
Mover. Moved by Member Paquette, seconded by Member Jansen. All in favor?
Next motion is that the recommendations of the committee of whole for the meeting of January 21st be adopted as resolutions of council.
Can I second it? Yeah, okay.
That's good too. So
All in favor? Motion passes.
we've now resumed back to council. So Mayor Burkett, your chair.
Yeah, notice of motion, is that where we're at? Notice of motion G1. That the resolution regarding OMER's governance be received or for consideration at the February 4th council meeting. Does anyone want to speak to it? Councilor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you. Just a little bit by way of background on this motion. This came to my attention through our normal AMO correspondence. And it struck me that since this involves our workers, the people that give to us on a regular basis, I did some looking into it. And yeah, they're definitely, for me, I could see why this was being pushed as hard as it was. I happened to be fortunate enough to attend the Roma conference this past weekend, and this was very much an item of discussion. The very first day, right after O Canada, the OMER's government changes were discussed by a panel that include MECPO Chair Lynn Dolan, MEPCO board member Scott Perkin, and Keith Robichaud, president of the Municipal Retirees Organization of Ontario. Now, this is, if you really look into this, and I checked a few things on the privatization of portions of pension plans. This sort of, I was just a little curious because the more I read, the more fascinating it became to me. But in essence, and then at the end of, just should point out, at the end of the conference, the chair of Roma, Robin Jones, gave the best presentation of the whole conference, in my view, and hopefully you'll see that on tape soon. It was a passionate appeal for municipalities, basically to challenge overreach by the province. And it included many, many things that you're all familiar with. I won't go into details. You know the list, everything from municipal planning to bicycle lanes and so forth. And she was very specific, noted concerns with OMERS. So just a quick little background on this thing. In by looking into it, I did talk to the director of planning for AMO, in the last few days. She sent me some slides. I didn't think we needed to go that far. But back in 2006, there was changes in legislation where there was employee and employer responsibility for managing the pension plan. And I'll give you an idea. The OMERS pension plan has net assets, get this, of $105 billion and involves servicing municipal workers. There's 289,000 people. So it's a massive, massive plan. And it's a massive amount of money. It's no wonder tends to be controversy. So anyway, back in 2006, the government removed itself from decisions around this plan, and they established a two-board system. One board basically involves AMO and CUPE, and then the other board is basically an administrative corporation. And they have been managing that fund since then. Now, controversies have not been non-existent in the management of this plan. So this helps you understand why this resolution is it is. Back in 24, there was a rate adjustment done in this plan because there was an argument put forward that some of the lower paid pensioners were subsidizing higher paid pensioners. This brought about some appeals from firefighters, police, Metrolinx. Okay. Anyway, that got resolved more or less, but some concerns were expressed about things. The bottom line is there's been a lot of arguments about whether or not the fund is being managed appropriately. CUPE has been wanting a review for years. They seem to be very concerned that the pension plan relies too much on fossil fuel investments and real estate investments. So they've wanted just a review of how the decision was made. So the idea was to review some bylaws, to review the issue of transparency, and to review the matter of what was the other one? Transparency and I think it was transparency and communications. So this is what they wanted. So in recent years, then the firefighters portion of the group, as I understand, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert. I think I got this right. And the police, and Metrolinx, they went to the government and said, "We're not happy with this. What can you do for us?" The government said, "Oh, we'll happily jump in here." I'm not surprised why when you see how much money is in there. So they went about and did a review, but they went well beyond anything that anybody managing this pension wanted. They came out with legislation recently, and it was out of the blue. It was presented one day. It was passed in a day. AMO, all the current ones. So now there's a minister that has an oversight and decision-making there. Now, the major concerns that are expressed, and can you imagine? Whoa, when you think about it. So the review, anyway, I've told you about the higher end. There was no first of all, why was there urgency on this legislation that came in? And no changes were made. Confidential issues could easily have been fixed with bylaws. OMERS has been managing the thing very well overall since 2006. So now the municipal voice, the people paying into the plan, their voice is now diluted, and decisions by the board basically should be made in the best interest of the plan. And you're probably aware that at a broader scale, there's a lot of private interests that want control over pension plans in Canada. The Canada Bank, it's a huge issue, right? Let's face it, if you can get a hold of this money and get it cheap, and the only risk is to the pension plan holders. You either pay higher rates if things go wrong, or you have to accept a lower pension plan. So it's not hard from my point of view to understand why I think mind your own business and get the hell away and let these guys battle it out themselves. That's what they want. That's what AMO's asking for. That's what these groups are asking for. And they seem quite united in this. So what they're saying is, so you've got this resolution that says, you know what, cut the overreach, get back to dealing with the issue, not the stuff that you weren't asked to look at, and move on. So that's why I present this to you today. I think we should support AMO, who basically is our policy advocate. I think we should support our staff that are paying into these funds. And I think that the idea that they have less control over their pension and the government said, and they were there talking about it, they were asked about it when they came to the bear pit. They said, oh, we're not proposing any changes, which to me says, then why? And the explanation of why was totally missing from any discussions that I heard during the conference or anything that I have been supplied with through either their policy officer and so forth. So I think it's like hands off, guys, back off, reconsider this legislation. You see what's in their resolution. I did not make that up. It's an exact resolution that AMO is asking all the municipalities to support. There was considerable support, if you measure applause, at Roma for this position from the many, there was 300 and something municipalities represented there this weekend. So I'm asking you to support this resolution with that bit of background.
Oh, Councillor Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah, just through the chair, I support the motion, but just a small spelling mistake. Our local MPP is Dunlop, not Dunlap.
Oh, where did I write that? I sincerely apologize to our local MPP.
Any further comments? Okay, Madam Clerk, do you have a motion?
No motion needed. So what happens is that now with these notices of motion, so council reports will come under this section, gives the member the opportunity to speak to it and any members to ask questions. And then if the member doesn't withdraw it, then it'll just come forward immediately on the next consent agenda for adoption.
Moving on to H, nothing, closed session. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The motion reads that committee resolve in a closed session that the meeting is hereby now closed to the public pursuant to Municipal Act SO 2001, Chapter 25, Section 2392, for the purpose of considering a trade secret, scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence in municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice, I can never say that word, significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, groups of persons, or organization, and be a trade secret, scientific, technical, commercial, financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary or potential monetary value.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, second by Councillor Taylor. All in favor?
Okay, we'll come out of close then. Okay, motion reads that closed session adjourned at 11:52 a.m. and the meeting is now reopened to the public.
Moved by Counselor Taylor, second by Counselor McIntyre. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Next motion reads that Administration Report 826-004 dated January 21st, 2026 regarding automated speed enforcement ASC be received for information.
Mover and a seconder, moved by Counselor Jansen, second by Counselor Brennan. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to bylaws. And Madam Clerk, I just have a question about bylaw before you read them. The two bylaw enforcement officers, Austin McCracken and Michael Whitney. Who are they? We didn't hire two, did we? Or just partnering?
No, these are existing staff and we're just looking to add them as seasonal enforcement so that we
Okay.
can
Road patrollers.
do more road patrolling
Okay.
help. We're finding
Okay.
that there are issues around this year where people are actually leaving their vehicles on rural concessions this year.
Okay.
It's not in town. And so because of how long those stretches are, we need more people to be able to issue them because folks are spread out on different routes. So.
All right. Thank you.
I should also note that due to the decision made earlier in this meeting, bylaw 2026-06 has been pulled from the list for consideration. That would have been the interim control bylaw. So,
You?
okay.
Okay.
So the motion then for bylaws reads that bylaw number 2026-01 to 2026-05 inclusive are hereby passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Counselor Brennan. All in favor? That's carried. Confirmation bylaw, Madam Clerk.
That bylaw number 2026-07 is hereby passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Counselor Jansen. All in favor? That's carried. And adjournment. Thank you very much, everyone. Moved by Counselor Jansen, second by Counselor McIntyre. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a great day.